More about felons. Oh, yeah, let's talk about it. We can't talk about where we are without first discussing where we came from. So, early in the 19th century, the only people who were allowed to vote were white male property owners. 1865, slavery gets abolished, but that doesn't mean that all of the problems go away. 1868, citizenship is granted, which means that you can now own property. 1870 comes around, we have a problem because people are fussing. There's people who are now citizens who are unable to own property. This is problematic. So then we pass the 15th Amendment, which stops the government from preventing your right to vote based upon your color or your previous condition of existence. Hashtag, were you enslaved? Okay, well, gosh darn it, we're in trouble now because people can own property and we can't discriminate against them based upon their color. What can we do now? So somewhere in the early 19th century, late 18th century, there are anti-literacy laws for enslaved people to be taught to read and or write because they would become more difficult to control. So you have anti-literacy laws, and as soon as the goalpost starts moving, boom, now we have literacy tests and poll fees. The problem that they ran into with these poll fees, not only did they target the newly freed slaves because hashtag you weren't allowed to read, also impacting poor whites. We can't have the poor whites and the blacks on the same page and or agreeing with each other or realizing they're in the same position. Can't not have that. So we're going to go ahead and create grandfather clauses. And what that does is it puts a separation between people based upon who their ancestors were before the Civil War. So if your ancestors were able to vote before the Civil War, then you automatically were grandfathered in and got your right to vote, which loosely translates over into if you were a slave before Civil War or your ancestors were enslaved before Civil War, this doesn't count for you. So now we've got the poor whites on our side. Unfortunately, black people are owning property now, so we can't do that. What can we do now? Right around this time is when we create felon voting laws. This is all that we're working with until 1964, when we start getting serious pushback about the discrimination that is happening, and we end up outlawing discrimination. Outlawing discrimination in 1964, and then in 1965, we make literacy tests illegal. You are not allowed to do this to stop people from voting. We arrive today with new forms of voter disenfranchisement using things like voter ID, requiring a driver's license in order to register to vote. So now that you know where we have come from, the ways that the goalposts have been moved to stop you from voting, let's talk specifically about felons. So if you're not in the loop by now, most people aren't. There's been vast misinformation campaigns because there's people who have a vested interest in people not having the ability to vote.
I don't want everybody to vote.
So let's start with the states that have no restrictions whatsoever. Even while felons are incarcerated, they still have the right to vote and never lose it in Maine and Vermont. States where your rights are restored upon release automatically, meaning you don't have to do any work. As soon as you are released, you have your right to vote back. That's DC, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Utah. Next, we have our states that your rights are restored upon release, including parole. We have California, Colorado, Connecticut, New York, South Dakota. States where you have to complete parole and probation and any other conditions of your release before your rights are restored: Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, New Jersey, New Mexico, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Washington, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. We saved the worst for last. Good. Next, we have the states that make it difficult for you. They will make you jump through hoops, and there will be some obstacles because they probably really don't want you to vote. That's going to be Alabama, Delaware, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi, Nevada, Tennessee, Virginia, and Wyoming. But again, it is not impossible. Difficult though, you will have obstacles. Some of these obstacles can be things like getting a pardon from your governor, and it's dependent on the type of crime that you committed or that you received the felony for. Some are completely off limits. Asia, what am I supposed to do with this information? Bring awareness. Bring awareness to it. There are a lot of people who have a vested interest in making sure that people who think that they cannot vote don't vote. they don't participate. So drive awareness as much as possible. Share this. If you have someone in your family who is a felon and you are in a state that's restored automatically, have a conversation with them. Seek out legal help. There's organizations like the CLC in Tennessee that are committed to helping people navigate the justice system, navigate the requirements, go through the process to restoring their rights. Your state might have something already in place. Look into it. And then pressure. Those of us who can vote, we should be applying pressure to our elected officials to push through legislation that allows people to participate in democracy outside of them committing some heinous crime and they've paid their debt to society. As always, this video is not to fearmonger or to guilt trip those of you who don't want to vote.
They want everybody to vote.
It's just to educate and possibly inspire those who do want to vote.
I don't want everybody to vote.
Or felt like they couldn't vote before, take action to making sure that their voice is heard. To me personally, it just seems like a whole lot of effort to go through, whole lot of work.
Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now.
For something that doesn't matter anyway.
As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Don't be afraid to think.